Hey neighbor, welcome back to Beyond ARTV. My name is John and thanks for joining me in the Hot Take Cafe. This is episode number 2 of this series and it's where I'll dish out some potential hot takes, unpopular opinions that you might not agree with, but hopefully I can show you my perspective and we can have a discussion even though we might disagree. So today I'm here to talk about politics. Big moans from the audience, I know. Politics are everywhere, left, right, in between. Where do you land? Which side are you on? It seems like it's all just a screaming match all the time, and that's been made worse, of course, by the likes of social media. Having an online platform, it's important, but also it seems more and more that people don't like when celebrities or musicians use their voice. It dates back to the whole shut up and dribble fiasco with LeBron James and that idiot reporter. People are not just their political opinions, they're also not just their talent. Therefore, if you play the guitar, you don't not have a voice just because you're good at that. You can also speak out on something that you believe in. On today's Hot Take Cafe, I'm hoping to talk to you a little bit more on why I feel that music and politics are intrinsically connected. It's a very natural thing for this to occur because if there's a problem in the world, I think that poetry, other forms of art, including music, can be a great vehicle for getting those thoughts out to the world. And if you don't think that music and politics have always been connected, I mean, in our modern age, dating back to the 1960s, think of the Vietnam War and think of all of the music that came out of those eras. So really quickly, let's go through a couple of the decades and just see some of the music that was politically charged or motivated that came out during those eras. Kicking it back to the 1960s, just to prove that this has been going on for so long, we had protest songs from everyone from Steppenwolf to Bob Dylan's classic Blowin' in the Wind, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Fortunate Son. That is a protest song if I've ever heard one. Anti-war. John Lennon, Imagine. There's so many tracks, not only just from him and other solo artists. I just feel that so many bands were starting to open that door to realize that it wasn't always this cookie cutter black and white situation, that there were always these injustices and that this was a great way to speak out on them. The 1970s, especially the late 70s, introduced more of the punk rock movement. We saw like God Save the Queen from the Sex Pistols, which really kind of gaslighted things in a major way and actually did pave the way for future bands to really just blast open the doors and have political discussion, whether that be something as bold as the government or something as mild as saying that every human deserves rights. Punk rock started that, and it's always confusing to me when I hear people saying, I love punk rock, but why do they have to talk about the politics, man? It dates back to the 70s, even before that. There were punk elements in music long before, and it's always going to continue into the future as well. Also in the 70s, we had Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, a big one there. John Lennon had more tracks in the 70s. I actually think that Imagine might have been 1970 around that time. Several other protest songs from him, like Working Class Hero. We had Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young with Ohio, which talked about a political protest shooting that happened. 4 people died, I believe, and this was a song that was outraged against that, and it calmly lifted that flag of protest, saying that this is not okay. Joni Mitchell, Big Yellow Taxi. I could continue rolling on, but the 70s were a big political time. The 80s were another massive movement. Pink Floyd, come on, another brick in the wall. Roger Waters, whether you agree with him or not, has always talked about politics. It's not new because of the Donald Trump era. He is protesting against that, and you might not agree with everything that he says, but why does it have to be this issue where it's like, well, I'll never listen to you again? It's like the idiots that burn their Nike shoes because Nike takes up for Colin Kaepernick. It makes no sense. You're still allowed to listen to it. You can still be a fan even if you don't directly agree on every single issue. The 80s continued on with other bands like Anti-Flag popping up, obviously in the punk rock scene. The DIY underground movement was growing in popularity, and it was great to see the messages that were getting out during that time. It's interesting to reflect on. It's a historical movement, really. And even in the mainstream, you had artists like Tracy Chapman with Behind the Wall talking about not only government abuse, but also domestic abuse, and these are issues that can be considered political. It's hard not to politicize things when there are injustices, and again, I reiterate that music is a great way to bring that out. You also had Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen, which your racist uncle is probably playing on the 4th of July saying, "Hell yeah, America!" Not realizing that it's actually a major protest song. Also, this shouldn't be considered a political statement, but even dating back to the 80s, Paul McCartney has been an activist. He had a song that was literally for support of the Amazon rainforest, not deforestation. So many trees being cut down, animals and wildlife, these natural habitats are being stripped away still to this day, thanks to the fires that we saw last year. And also, just over the past century, things are going away quickly, and we got how many people from him? I don't think that should be considered a political issue. It is our planet, and it's something that we should protect. But apparently we have to make a song in support of it because other greedy people don't agree. The 90s gave us way too many to even sit down and name. Rage Against the Machine, Public Enemy, Nirvana, the White Stripes even got political at the end of the decade. The Big Three Killed My Baby, talking about the automotive industry and all of the repercussions there. It's not just so cut and dry as we hate the president all the time, and it might seem that way now, and yes, I am anti-Donald Trump myself. Look at the sign that I've got sitting. But you also don't necessarily have to say, well, you know what? F that guy, f this girl, because they don't agree with my point of view, and I've been guilty of that too. It's just hard to have civil discourse sometimes when we see these injustices, but again, it goes beyond just the president. It goes to the other issues in the world, and I think a lot of these bands were addressing that. We also had that song from the White Stripes. Later on in the 2000s, they changed the lyrics in The Big Three Killed My Baby to talk about George W. Bush. So yes, the 90s were extremely political once again. 2000 to 2009, oh, that decade right there was definitely politically tinged. The Iraq War was going on, there was a lot going on in Afghanistan. Green Day's American Idiot, anyone in the audience out there? That was an extremely political statement, the title track and so much of the album at large packed into a rock opera concept album. And yes, that is my second favorite album of all time, but that doesn't change the fact that from an objective point of view, they really got the point driven home. So many people, I think, opened their eyes because this is still technically the pre-internet age. Not everybody had a smartphone in their hands, and it was hard to kind of get a movement going, but I just feel that Green Day rallied people up and they saw that George W. Bush was full of shit more often than not, and they were willing to call him out on that. There were other groups doing it, of course. We got other hits from Tom Morello, from Rage Against the Machine, of course, The Flaming Lips, Radiohead, Idiotech, anyone? There's a lot of tracks that I can name from the 2000s, and while it might not have been as aggressive as the 90s, it was still out there in a major way because we had plenty of things to talk about politically. The 2010s stepped it up once again, and racial injustice is a big thing that supercharged that decade and kind of defined things. A lot of black artists spoke out on this. Kendrick Lamar had his hit song All Right, which was definitely in many ways, yes, catchy, but also protesting these injustices. We also had Nipsey Hussle, Beyonce, and even a lot of other bands that had continued to do it in the past did it again. I think The Killers' song Land of the Free was another one at the end of the decade where we kind of talked about immigration issues, and it's fine for them to do that. I think what I'm trying to get across to you here today, and what I'm trying to show you all these examples for, is to show you, yes, that music and politics are connected, but also that it's nothing new and that we don't need to be on this campaign to end politically charged music. There is so much music out there. There is more music than you could listen to in 3 lifetimes that has nothing to do with politics, that you could just turn off your little head and say, everything's okay in my bubble. But sometimes it's okay to challenge yourselves, to look outside of the box and to find something that maybe you don't agree with, but you can also watch it, listen to it, respect it, and not just shut it down and say, this is necessarily incorrect because I don't agree with it. Why are all musicians and bands suddenly all leftists? Where is this coming from? If you look to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter replies, that's really all you see when bands do something as little as, oh no, they encourage somebody to go out and vote today. Oh no, what a terrible thing to do. What a terrible thing to actually say to go out and to use your right if you're an American citizen to be able to vote. What a terrible thing to tell people to do. And then there's people commenting, Trump 2020, Trump 2024, which can't happen, fortunately, thanks to our system that we have in place to limit only 2 terms. I really hope that from an objective point of view, you can see why the musician has the right to do so. And of course you can say, well, I'm gonna exercise my right to not listen to them. And that's fine, but also I hope you can see how narrow-minded you're being. These are just my opinions on politics and music, and I know that it's not the most popular thing to bring up, but I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What are some of your favorite protest songs of all time? Maybe something that just has a political edge to it. Let me know in the comments section. Drop a like on this video, and remember that it's all just my opinion, and really if it goes beyond that, I don't want to see people attacking each other in the comments, and I'm going to try and moderate them the best that I can. I'll see you soon for more right here on Beyond ARTV.